Okay, so thanks everyone for your patience. Got all the emails out to everyone who asked for the link. So hopefully they got it. Hopefully they'll be joining us, and we'll get started, I think, regardless. And yeah. So Susan, do you want to kick things off, or do you want me to?
Go for it.
Okay. So, thank goodness for Susan staying on top of the Purdue hearing and the process and everything that's been going on. I really lost touch with it all, and Susan is she also really likes to dig into the legal aspects of things, which is helpful because for a lot of us it can become overwhelming and very dizzying. And I think that she does a really good job of analyzing what our laws should look like. And so she reached out to me and let me know about the what's going on with Purdue now. And she has an idea, which she'll share in a little bit, um, about how justice during the Department of Justice hearing could possibly sway the bankruptcy hearing. And so I think she's onto something. And we decided it would be a good idea to pull this together for a couple of reasons. One, I hear frequently because our work with the Trail of Truth and with Truth Farm often overlaps moms who identify with fentanyl poisoning more so than the opioid epidemic from back in Ed's days, or even my days. So I lost my son, Jeff, 11 years ago. At that time, people were referring to the epidemic as a heroin epidemic, even though at that time more people were dying from prescribed opioids than all other drugs combined. When Ed lost his son, which was even earlier than I lost my son, he lost his son to Oxycontin. And so that was an example of a lot of people were dying from prescribed opioids. Then we moved into a lot of people dying from heroin. Now we've moved into a lot of people dying from fentanyl. But what's important to understand, because I think a lot of people, and we had a woman say this at a meeting here at Truth Farm the other night. She was like, I don't want to be disrespectful. I just don't feel like the Purdue stuff applies to me because my brother died from fentanyl and fentanyl was all he used. But the reality is, everyone involved in opioid substance use, addiction, recovery, deaths, whether it's from fentanyl, whether your loved one ever touched a opioid prescription or not, everything ties back to Purdue Pharma. And we know this conceptually, theoretically, based on society and based on scientific studies. So an example is where Purdue Pharma originally marketed their opioids the heaviest, and there's maps that where they show where they were concentrating their marketing efforts. Overdose fatalities remain 20% higher there than in other locations. So they consistently, even though the deaths are now from fentanyl, so overdose fatalities are higher in the locations that Purdue marketed their drugs. So that's really solid scientific evidence that shows us that they had an impact. And then when you think about why this is, or why we can say that all current deaths tie back to Purdue Pharma, it's because there has always been people addicted to let's say heroin, we'll pick as the base drug, right? There's always been a certain number of people who used heroin and were addicted to heroin. The number escalated multifold once the pharmaceutical companies were marketing opioids to everyone. Without that effort, without big pharma, and we're going to say Purdue because they were the first ones to do this, without big pharma marketing opioids broad scale to everyone, no one would know that they're wonderful recreationally. Like this just wouldn't be a societal thing. We might still have a very small percentage of people who use heroin or are addicted to heroin, but we wouldn't have the broad scale use that we have today of opioids. And even when you think about the families who identify with fentanyl poisoning, and maybe they don't identify with addiction at all, maybe they view their loved ones as having just used fentanyl. Even for them, when you think about it, a lot of them used it in the format of a pill. It's a counterfeit Oxycontin. Well, why did they want a counterfeit, or why did they want an Oxycontin? Because opioids and Oxycontin were so well marketed that and people know they make you feel good, they make you feel a certain way. And so people are drawn to that. So even Purdue's marketing of Oxycontin legally prescribed 30 years ago is influencing what young people do to this day. So I wanted to start with that just because I sense this I see it a lot. I think that a lot of people who've lost their loved ones to fentanyl, whether it was an instant thing or they were addicted, they don't see themselves as identifying with this issue or with deserving justice related to um, the the opioid settlements. We, Susan and I both, and I think a lot of people, Ed, I think a lot of people who've been doing this for a long time feel differently. We feel like everyone has a tie to this, and everyone deserves justice related to the pharmaceutical companies' actions. And so that's really what I wanted to say. And then we'll pause and see if there's any questions related to that very specifically, questions or comments. I'm sure Ed has comments.
I just want to add
Just
one thing.
remember, there's a lot of people here for comments. And then we'll hand it off to Susan to talk about the justice aspect.
I just want to add one point to that. Um, you know, the deaths that escalated and from the normalized prescription opioids, if you just look at
Mhm.
10 years before that, people experimented with drugs and came out of it in high school, things like that. There wasn't the addiction aspect. And that's really what opioids changed. They changed the normalization of it. So I'll go ahead, Ed, if you want to share anything.
You're muted. You're muted, Ed. Does anyone else have any questions or comments while Ed is figuring out how to unmute? Susan, if you click ask to unmute on his, thing will pop up on his screen and then he can just click.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, no, I agree with Alexis. Um, when I speak at whether it's a Lexus event or a fentanyl event, I remind everybody how this current situation all started, and it all started with Purdue. And the biggest lie they ever told was less than 1% of patients get addicted. And it's a proven lie. And in 2007, they should have been prosecuted for it, but they weren't. It's political. And, so I know Alexis will probably get into this, but I think, like, I had one lady, she says, "Oh, I sent a letter," and she sent me her letter, and all she talked about was car fentanyl, but didn't mention Purdue whatsoever in this letter. So I just want to remind people. So basically, this deal was signed in 2020. It's been on hold. The judge is going to answer one question: do I approve this plea bargain deal that they wrote, or do I say no and reject the plea? So I'm sure everybody's here is asking her to reject the plea because just paying fines is not proper punishment. And as far as anything with the bankruptcy, and that's all downstream. This is either a yes or no by the judge. So if you didn't write your letter, when you're writing your letter to the judge, keep that in mind. There is one question she can't do anything. She can't charge the Sackler. She can't charge anybody. All this judge is doing is saying yes or no. Approve the deal or do not approve the deal. And my point when I wrote my letter was it doesn't matter how big the fine is. A fine is not a deterrent. It is part of the business model. And for people who might not be aware, with all the billions the Sacklers are going to pay in the bankruptcy scam, they are paying that with the interest. They took billions of dollars and they offshored it. And it's been sitting there collecting interest over the years. And they're going to pay all these fines with the interest that they made on our blood money. And so just keep that in mind when you write your statement to the judge. We're begging, asking, pleading. I use the word plead. I'm pleading with the court to say no to this settlement. That and fines are no deterrent. You know, legal by fine or punishable by fine means it is legal for a price. And this is bigger than Purdue. So if they get away with this, other companies, and there's been other companies, they say, okay, we're going to sell 10 billion worth of rat poison. Yeah, okay, we might have to pay 2 billion in fines. We made $8 billion. And it'll go on and on till finally someone goes to jail. So that would be the ultimate outcome. But I've been through this so many times. It would be a miracle. But every time, and Alexis might have thought this, every time I say, okay, this is it, this is the end, something always pops up. And unfortunately, if this bankruptcy scam goes through, there's going to be a new company called Kanoa, Knoa, which is Purdue renamed, going to be run by our attorney general selling Oxycontin. So unfortunately, it's crazy, but
Thanks, Ed. Thank you. You've been the OG in this, and we appreciate you and you continuing to use your voice and not just checking out, because I wouldn't blame you.
thanks.
Um, I just want to add a couple things. The other problem with the whole story is that there were failures within our federal government. Our regulators knew what was happening. The DEA sets the aggregated quotas of all prescription drugs that come into the country. They failed to do their job. FDA, they have responsibility in this too, which a lot of people believe is why they haven't gone to criminal trial, because they don't want that exposed. But as Ed said, with this hearing, the main goal is just to get this judge to reject the deal, period. That's all she can do. That's all her power is. However, every letter that you send in goes to the DOJ. So they're reviewing it too, and they work very closely with the judge. The prosecutor and the judge kind of work, the judge is going to listen to the prosecutor. So it's important to, make all your points in the letter, but mostly it's just to reject the deal. And what will happen is it doesn't immediately cancel the bankruptcy plan, which has been confirmed. But what it does is it disrupts it, because the bankruptcy hinges on this going through. It cannot be effective until the criminal charges are resolved. The charges that they're facing are pretty minimal considering everything that they've done. So I don't think that they can change those. It's just the sentencing that they can change. The bankruptcy itself, there are some people that support this going through and feel like we need this money. We've seen what happens with opioid settlement funds over the past 4 years, and there's not very many people to tell you it's been good. We have really bad examples of what happens when these funds go back through the same system. The prosecutors have told us for years, we have to do this through the bankruptcy because it's the only way we'll get access to Purdue's money, and it's desperately needed to abate this crisis. Well, in Pennsylvania alone, they're only set to get 212 million from Purdue, and they have 258 million still sitting in their coffers that they haven't spent yet. So that whole argument is a wash. That they have no stance on that. The problem with that is, yeah, we do need funding, but we need it to be spent in the right places and the decisions made by the right people. That's not happening. They're spending it on really problematic things. And if you think about that for a second, these lawsuits in general just don't even make sense. The attorney generals sued the pharmaceutical companies for creating this population of victims. Now they're using funding to continue to criminalize victims. That just doesn't even make cognitive sense. So you have to question, what was their real motivation? We know that there's groups of very elite, high-powered lawyers that are controlling this bankruptcy. They've written it. They've written all of them. They're all involved in all of them. And it's really just, there's one company, it's a, a banking firm that's been getting $225,000 every month for the past 70 some months, regardless of how much work they do. There's three of them actually. Sometimes that comes out to about $5,000 an hour because they also have to submit their hourly, work hours. This is a group of, in my opinion, very elite lawyers that are manipulating the law to get rich. We met with a DEA administrative law judge a few years ago, Alexis and I and a few other people maybe on this call, and he shared that, the AGs were told not to include the victims. They wouldn't get as much profit, things like that. Like, it's really gross. So this is an opportunity that we were all kind of stunned by, I think. I think we kind of forgot there was criminal charges pending. So when this came up, it's really time. I don't know. I know I didn't have time for all this, and digging through this legal language has been kind of a nightmare, but it's important because it may be our last opportunity to really stop this. And even beyond anybody who's been impacted by opioids, if you believe in democracy and our criminal justice system the way we were taught, this is a big deal. This has been replicated by other companies, many of them from Purdue. They started the marketing. They were one of them was like a marketing person, and then they're the ones who started marketing drugs. So we still have pharmaceutical ads on TV. Why do we have that? Like, that needs to end. The problems that cause this, the corruption within FDA, it's still there. Nothing has been improved. So there's a lot of changes that still need to be made. I lost my train of thought. Okay. So this opportunity to disrupt, it's just, it's justice in the criminal justice system alone. Bankruptcies are being used left and right by people. In Pennsylvania, we have a jail healthcare company who was sued by a friend of ours for the death of her daughter that happened in jail. She won the case. She hasn't been paid because that company is in bankruptcy. Yet they're still operating their healthcare in our jails. Like, that's not okay. So they're operating. There's no means to, hold them accountable for anything. So the whole, design and using the bankruptcy is just, it's allowing people to get away with really horrible things. So let me see if there's anything on this one here.
Yeah, they just got over $2 million too yesterday. Or wait, today. WellPath.
Yeah.
How do you like that?
So yeah, that's really about it. I mean, we're gonna try to meet with the DOJ or try to get see if we can make any kind of recommendations. That's our hope. We'll see. I honestly don't even know who's running it, what the political ties are at this point, and that's all things that I don't really care about, but they impact this. And yeah, so Alexis is kind of planning to bring the tombstones. We're gonna get together and gather. Yeah, there's not gonna be the settlers aren't gonna be outside. We're not gonna run into people, but it's important to make a presence. The media is gonna be there. We need to let people know that this is still ongoing. Nothing's been resolved. We have politicians that are still using this language to promote their campaigns. I took down the Sacklers. I was instrumental in stopping OxyContin. No, it's still happening. Like this doesn't go away. Everybody just got tired of hearing about it. Um, so yeah, I think that's all I have. Any other thing that you think I missed, Alexis?
I just wanted to add a couple things. It's our constitutional right to seek redress for harms done to us. And this bankruptcy proceeding actually eliminates anyone who did not get a claim in by 2019. So as an example, Kim asked in the chat, how she could get a claim for her son who died more recently. If you didn't get a claim in by 2019, this bankruptcy proceeding eliminates everyone's right from being able to file a claim ever. So it literally is an infringement of your constitutional rights. And you think about the children whose parents have died, they didn't know to submit a claim. They will never be allowed to submit a claim. Victims, as Susan mentioned, get the lowest amount of money of all, and the burden of proof that they've put on families to produce to show that you even have a right to a claim that you submitted by 2019 is incredible. And so families are really getting screwed in this process. So if you did not get a claim in the way that things stand right now, you will never be able to get a claim in on this, even though we know it's well established that Purdue Pharma and the Sacklers were the architect of this entire epidemic. And this thing will not end for, probably a couple more decades. So that's why, the point that I was making at the beginning of the webinar, that's why it's so important that all of us speak up now, whether you have a claim in or not. If we don't get this thing turned around, and I do agree with Susan, like I think this is an opportunity to possibly hold up the bankruptcy and possibly have an impact on that. This is our last chance, and so we need as many people as possible to speak up about this, whether it's, the most important thing really is putting in a letter, a victim impact statement is the most important thing to do. And then showing up at the rally would be a big help as well. And spreading the word about this to everyone that you know. The victim impact statements are due tomorrow by 5 p.m.
And you don't
So
need to know about the law. Just I want to put that out there. Just
yeah,
tell your story.
tell your story and the points that Ed helped make as well. Say you do not approve of this deal. This is not justice. You do not want Purdue to get away with this. You want this, you want this stopped. You do not approve of the deal. So I think that that's really the most important thing, is saying those things, and that we know money isn't a deterrent. All these companies have paid out money over and over and over again, and they continue with their bad practices. So fines are not a deterrent to what is going on. And then talk about your loved one. And as Ed said, tie it back to Purdue. Even if you just say a statement like, my loved one died of fentanyl, but I know that Purdue Pharma is the architect of the opioid epidemic, that ties it back to Purdue. So, talk about your loss or your recovery or your impact from opioids, but tie it back to Purdue in some way. And like I said, even if it's just that sentence, Purdue Pharma was the architect of the opioid epidemic. That's widely established. I think that's important. Yeah. So do we want to talk any more about the letters, Susan? Like the telling them how to write a letter, or does anybody have any questions about that?
Someone just put in the chat asking for a template. I have a template. I think Alexis does too. If you want to share your email, we can get one over to you. I wanted to point out a couple other things with the bankruptcy. If anybody has been involved and has a claim and has been through this process, a couple other things happened that I wanted to just mention real quick. They changed the structure that eliminated someone dying, putting you into a higher bracket. That used to be like the highest amount you could get is if someone lost their life. That's been eliminated. The only factor that changes who gets what amount is whether they used an opioid for 6 months or more. That's it. There's a higher threshold, lower. Doesn't matter if someone lost their life, which is just disgusting to me, to not value the lives that were lost to this. Also, the bankruptcy was held back in 2024 or 2023 because of the Supreme Court's ruling that they were not allowed to give non-consensual third-party releases because the Sacklers are not bankrupt. They should not be involved in this. So the Supreme Court held it up. They claim now this new process, people have to consent to release the Sacklers. That's true maybe in language, but in really digging in and reading this, there's provisions in there that protect them regardless of if anybody gives releases or not. Everybody could have said, no, I don't opt into these releases. They still would be protected. There's a section in there, I think it's section 11F or something, which would claw this back to the bankruptcy court if anybody tried to file a lawsuit against the Sacklers or any other protected party. And then the bankruptcy judge would determine if it's an estate action, which is anything involving opioids. So, they're in violation in many different ways. And we're hoping those types of things will also influence the Department of Justice. If anybody really cares about the law and the way our foundation was built, they'll hopefully stop this. But I don't know. Don't want to get my hopes up either. So we'll see. But yeah, so if you put your email in, Alexis, or I can send you a template for sure. I have one. I think she has one too. Actually, she has a form. Do you want to put the link to the form in here, Alexis?
Yeah, I am trying to find that myself, actually. I didn't create it, so it's one of our staff members did. So I'll find that while we're on here and put it in there.
Does anybody else have any questions?
So we're just meeting the day of the court, which is the 21st.
Let's pause on that, Ed, and see if people have questions first about the letter
Right.
or submission. Yeah, let's pause on that first. Then we'll talk about the details of the rally.
Yeah. So as far as submission, most people are creating a Word document and sending them an email, which is on the thing. And they have a PDF form, which is very clunky. But if you look at that, at the top of the form, it'll tell you the case number. So if you put that in your subject, I would suggest, and then it tells you basically you got to state, do you want your statement public or private? If you request to speak and no one knows the criteria or who's going to get to speak, it has to be public.
5 people, I heard, are being chosen.
How many?
5.
Okay, yeah. I mean, has anyone heard if they are able to speak? I mean, I'm not surprised. So I was able to testify in 2007. There was 19 of us, and we were in a courtroom back then. There was no Zoom. We were given 1 minute each. So the 5 people at least get 5 minutes each. But, I know I asked to be one. You probably did too. And we'll see what happens.
I finally found our Google link so this is one of our interns created a Google form that's easier, I think, than the PDF. You can just email. So I put that in the chat window. If you just want to email, you can just email. I would still follow the format that they're asking for. And I put the link to their format in the chat window as well. And one of our interns created a Google document that's much easier. And if you want to just fill that out, you're welcome to fill that out, and she'll submit everyone's statements for them. And yeah. Okay. Yeah, so if there aren't any more questions about submitting a letter, Are there any other questions about submitting a letter of victim impact statement? If there aren't any other questions, then we'll talk about the rally. So we're gonna rally, and I'll try to grab that address, or maybe somebody can put the address in the chat while we're doing this. Ed or Susan, if you have it handy. If not, I'll look it up. We're gonna meet at the court. The rally will start about noon, and the hearing is at 2 p.m. We'll be bringing Trail of Truth tombstones to set up. There's a grassy area there, so we'll set those up. We also have, art activism installation that we'll be doing in addition to the tombstones, which I'm not going to reveal here just because I don't know for sure everybody who's on the call. But it'll be powerful. Any names that we're aware of who have submitted victim impact statements, if you submit it through that Google form, I'll know that you have submitted. We'll include your loved one's name on the art installation that we're doing, and Susan, I'm sure, will get names to us as well. So if you're interested in having your loved one's name included, make sure you submit a victim impact statement and let Susan or I know, so that we can include your name or your loved one's name on that art installation. The rally's taking place April 21st at noon. And it's in Newark, New Jersey. Susan put the address in the chat. And I don't know anything about parking or anything like that. I always feel like I get asked questions about parking. I don't know where to park. So if that question comes up.
There's three parking garages very near there, and they say there's meter street parking. So
Awesome. Awesome. And I imagine, since the court hearing is at 2 p.m., I imagine we'll be there until 2:30, 3 p.m. I think that a lot of us will probably want to be there for the, to hear it. If are people allowed to attend, Susan, even if they're not?
I don't know. I haven't gotten an answer
Okay.
to that yet,
Okay.
but I can update everybody.
Yeah. Who do you talk to find out? I'll put the Trail of Truth email in the chat so you can email Trail of Truth and find out if your loved one is included. I can tell you now, we cannot commit to having specific loved ones tombstones installed for this. Because they're all bundled by state right now. And it would be like a real ordeal to unbundle them and pull specific loved ones' tombstones out. They're all in a trailer and storage. It would be really hard. So we'll probably just be bringing what's handy. Unfortunately, I would love to be able to do that for people, but I just don't think that we're going to be able to pull specific ones by then.
Yeah, we were pretty time limited on this. Oh, also, red. We're all gonna wear red shirts,
Yeah.
blood money, red. So if anybody, we don't have time to make shirts or anything, but bring signs, pictures, and please wear red if you're coming. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So I'm new. I jumped on the call like a couple of minutes ago, maybe like 10 minutes ago. So I'm just like, it's a lot. So is there somewhere that I can get a summary overview of what is happening right now as far as all of this?
Yeah.
I think the best place is Susan's Facebook page. It's on Veloma and yours, right, Susan?
Just on mine, and I can
Okay.
actually, if you did you put your email in the chat? I grabbed a couple here. I have an email that I sent out. I can send you that gives it like a history.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm. Someone
No.
asked about a host hotel. That might be Kim, I'm not sure. We don't have one. I'm only about an hour and a half from there, but I do know of one or two people that are flying in. So if we decide on a place, I can let you know. If that's Kim, I think it is. Yes. Okay. I'll let you know, Kim, if we come up with something.
Yay, Kim, it'll be good to see you. I'm gonna put Susan's Facebook post in the chat as well so that it's a really great, concise overview, I think. If that helps folks. Yeah. Well, thank you all. I don't think we need to stay on unless there's other questions or comments, right? Susan, I feel like we've kind of gone through it all.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions.
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat. Susan will put her email in the chat. And wow, that's amazing, Michelle.
And
If
spread the word. Brothers,
anybody
sisters.
needs anything, what was that, Susan?
I said just spread the word. Anybody, brothers, sisters,
Yeah,
everybody,
spread the
get these
word,
letters
please,
in.
because again, it's like we need so many of these statements in. Like we really need so many statements in. When you think about, there's been more than 1 million opioid related deaths since the beginning of this epidemic. Like if we could flood them with 1,000 even, it would make an impact. So we need to reach as many people as possible. And we need to help people understand why this really does apply to everyone. It really does. It really applies to everyone. And if you ever need any, like, if you don't know about what Purdue did, um, and you don't have time to read Patrick's book before you don't have time
Empire,
to read
Empire,
Patrick's book because it's like this thick. But watch
dope sick.
Dope Sick or Painkiller, any of those shows, binge watch those over the weekend. It'll get you angry enough to come on Tuesday, I promise you, because it is so well documented that these people did this maliciously. And despite evidence that things were going south and that they were causing harm, they continued to forge forward and continued to market these opioids in a really deceptive ways. And they painted our loved ones as the harm doers, the ones in the wrong for getting addicted. They literally paid marketing firms to counter grieving moms' narratives, and to paint our loved ones as criminals. And they are the criminals. And I think that we need to make that clear. Stacy, question?
Yes, I know. I already wrote a letter for myself. I'm helping my sister write one tonight as I'm watching her die before my eyes. Can I submit a letter for Michelle and Corey? For my best friend Michelle, a mom who
Yes, 100%.
died at
Yeah.
their okay, I can submit it for her and Corey too. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
100%.
Yeah, there's no restrictions. You don't have to
Okay.
be a claimant in the bankruptcy or anything like that. Anybody can submit a letter.
Okay. I didn't know if I could submit a second one because I were submitting one as my cyber, and she's dead. She can't submit it, but I swore I would do anything I could to keep her going for her.
100%.
So
Yep,
okay,
the
I'll be doing that
more
as
they
soon as I get
receive, the
off
better.
this. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, all right. Everybody help us spread the word, and yeah, let's come together and get this done, and I think make a splash and maybe get that judge to reject the deal. That's what we need them to do, reject the deal.
Yeah, I'm sure your group probably put out a PR release on the PR newswire and then share that and
We
try to
didn't
generate some coverage.
We didn't yet, but I suspect we'll work on that between now and Tuesday, and we would welcome your help. We can loop you in on a email to help us with that, Ed.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody with media contacts, we need as much media as possible. We do have a couple that have confirmed. But Always need more. Alexis, you gonna do a press release? You have capacity for that?
Yeah, if you want me to, I can start one and then get your help with it.
All right, that'll work.
Cool. Any other questions or comments before we head out? All right. Thank you all for showing up with such short notice, and I appreciate everybody's work to hold them accountable, and especially Susan's for making sure that we all knew about this. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for her staying on top of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Bye-bye.